is the Eve Invasion World Tour Toronto preview. So we're going to talk about what's going on in Toronto, or what will happen. People are arriving now, and through this weekend, they will be getting together for this fan fest in Toronto. A lot of stuff will happen there, including CSM reveals, who's actually on the CSM this year, but also keynotes that will probably give us some information on what's going on with EVE Online, with this invasion patch that has come through. By patch, I mean expansion. All right, so we also want to talk about the news, what's going on in the war sections of EVE Online, and that is the North and some parts of the South, and just some of the interesting developments that are happening beyond that. How you doing, McLeod?
Yeah, not bad, dude.
All right, we're going to try something a little different here. We're not actually pinging yet. I want to see like how many people organically discover it, and then we can and then if it's enough, we can actually stop bothering people when we roll. Well, as I suspected, very few people, so we like people because they tell us stuff and we listen to their ideas and stuff. So let's get some people in here.
I don't like people.
I don't either, actually. That's a joke. Okay. You know, we can talk a little bit about process. I think people are always interested in that, especially people who want to stream on their own. So, and we can talk about our process. Let's see. So we have a Discord that has a lot of people in it, about 2,500, and we ping out, you know, we're having a chill stream, so come hang out. It's more or less public, you know, so if you want to be on Talking in Stations, one of the shows, then if you're hanging around our public, we get to know you a little bit, and we get to see how much you know and how interesting you are and how good your mic is and that sort of stuff. And then from there, we can pick you up and put you on the show. So the chill streams are kind of a way of letting people in a low stress environment where they're not being interviewed, they're not asked to produce information, to just kind of hang out and say what's on their mind or what their opinions are, what they think, or what they know. And it's a good way of vetting new people, but it's also good for them to kind of warm up to the idea of other people watching them as they talk about EVE Online, because it's kind of stressful.
Some people are a little bit. Oh my god. Some people are a little bit concerned about offering up their opinions to the public because the public can be a little bit harsh, but I don't think so. I
don't think our guys are, frankly. Like, we have some really good fans.
Nah.
This is the right place. I think if you're an adult and you really just want to talk about EVE Online like adults do and have discussions and, you know, not necessarily score points or anything. I think if that's what you're into, I think Talking in Station's the right place. All the other stuff can go somewhere else. And because of that, I think our audience is supportive and pretty helpful, actually. Hey, Buttercup. Oops. This is why you use an @ symbol, so you get the name right. I just wrote, hey, Butterbutt. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of things to talk about. One of the first things is, actually, let's go to that now. Oh my God, my hair falls on my face. Oh, subscribers, look at that. Nice.
Hey.
Gotta stop to say hello to that. Thank you guys. Super awesome. One of the things that's Giddy, and Slider. Thank you guys. That's really cool. Thank you. So we found out yesterday, right when we were about to go on with our political show. Did you see that?
Did I see that?
Yeah.
Like, I was not.
Of course you
It,
did. You were running it. Sorry, I forgot who I was talking to.
Matterall, come on, man.
I forgot who I was talking to. But also, you're supposed to play along.
All
Oh
right.
yeah, that was great.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Get
I
with
didn't
it.
realize you. Yeah. Yeah.
Get
Sorry.
with it. Hey guys, everybody, hello. You can be a sidekick. You gotta kick it back. Anyway, so we did this political show yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. It was meant to be fun. It was all tongue in cheek. It wasn't like try hard. It wasn't. We weren't trying to be somebody that actually had information on who the winners of CSM were. It was more to play along with the politics of you online, because there's certainly a lot of talk about war and stuff like that. But it's neat. It would be neat to do some kind of horse race, political election night coverage, and we're gonna do we're gonna do it again, I think, and we're gonna do it with graphics and report from regions, and maybe even have like correspondence and really have fun with it. We tried to do that yesterday, but because of circumstances, we didn't have all the stuff prepared. And so we basically just went with it, and it was still a lot of fun. And Vily popped in, and Noisy Gamer popped in, and talked about some statistics here and there. Then we put out what our statistics were, and then we all talked about predictions and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure there were some. Actually, I'll probably put that up on screen in case you missed it yesterday. Let me see if I can grab some of the raw data.
I mean, if you guys didn't know, it was sort of tongue in cheek. Like, I mean, like we named it kind of like a bit of a clickbaity kind of title. Like that should have been a bit of a
What was your first clue?
a telltale sign that it wasn't super serious.
Yeah. So here's a list that we compiled of. These are accounts that voted for certain people, and this is only the first position. We didn't get into the second or third position. But what you can see is that even among Talking in Stations fans that decided to participate in a serious way, that Aerith is way on top. So that tells me that we have a lot of Imperium members that listen to our show. And also, of course, there's going to be a bias towards me because this is my platform that I live on. So that was going to be pretty clear. But I thought what was interesting were the other symbols there. And one was that Exuki is polling really well, and that's really good for him. And he is a wormhole candidate, so it's kind of people are kind of tense about it. So yeah, that was neat to see him doing really well. That's kind of expected because we support him. He's part of TIS, and there's a lot of wormholers that watch his show on here, so that may account for some of that, but I think there's more than represents that population. So I think he's getting support maybe from other places as well, which would be really good. The other thing that was interesting is Olmeca Gold is polling well. It's not necessarily surprising because he has captured the imagination of some PvPers, especially northern PvPers. So Olmeca Gold coming in right about the same place as Exuki, if you can see that. That to me was like pretty telling that he's going to have a strong showing. Whether he makes it or not, don't know, but he's going to have a strong showing. He's not a candidate that deflated at the last second. So I think that would be interesting.
I kind of feel like Olmeca sort of really captures the the imagination of like the crowd that's sort of Gurgoons, but also is sort of anti large nullsec blocks kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean there are those there, and the traditional kind of thought processes if they're anti goons and they'll be pro pan fan, but like there are definitely groups out there, people out there that like don't like the idea of large blocks controlling being super controlling on the CSM. So like he could be polling extremely well with those groups.
Yeah. And I think if you look here, there's some other mid-tier players that, and by players I mean candidates, right? Players in this political arena that some pulled strong, some didn't. Unfortunately, well, Manic did okay there. This is kind of his audience too because he's a streamer, and he got like 10 number one votes there. Blood Ruin, a little bit less. He didn't really campaign very strongly. Blazing Bunny, who's been all over the place on TIS, didn't track well in these polls, although he has more support in his Northern Coalition group. But here he didn't track very well. I think Company or Campaign is, if I'm not mistaken, also a wormholer. I'm not 100% sure on that. And that a lot of his support may have gone to Exuki first, so he might be in number 2 spot for Exuki voters, a bit more than the number 1 spot. Liz is also a fan, and she's the winner of our Avatar Titan that we gave away earlier this year. And she was running for CSM, and she did okay. She has her favorites there. Jurius Doctor, I'm sad to say, didn't poll very well on this, and he is part of Talking in Stations as well. I think he's run a really interesting campaign, and it's very smart, and he's broken some ground on ways to do it. But his audience might actually be outside of this poll. And then there's some, I think Teddy Gayak, it's too small for me to read very well. He's also a wormholer, if I'm not mistaken. He was from, he's from a group that, and I forget the name of the wormhole group, but basically they're the ones that kind of evicted Popsy. And so there may be a bias in this poll for him because the people who watch Talking in Stations are fans of Keskora or Exuki, and those guys were opposed to him. Although it's wormhole space and they all kind of support each other in the end, but there could be a little tribal there. So didn't do very well. Oh, the judge didn't do very well here either. His support may be somewhere else, but on this poll he actually got 3. And I'm not sure why that is. I would have expected him to do better, and he may in fact do a lot better in the actual election. Yeah, Whole Control is who I'm thinking of. Thank you, ITZ. So, but among the middle tier, the people who did really well, and their support is elsewhere. Well, actually, didn't do really well here, but probably will end up doing well is Dunkdinkle, right? He got 12 votes here. And these are all number 1 votes. And Stitch, he did really well. Got 15. And I'm not sure how many. I think those are might be initiative voters because Stitch was number 1 on the initiative ballot. So that might be the initiative's representation of the people who filled out this thing. Innominate did well. Again, and these are number 1s, right? So this may not be, Innominate may be either being put up at number 1 instead of Aerith for some Imperium voters, or it could be non-Imperium voters that are voting for him. And that is a pretty strong number for being number 3 on the major ballot, right? The Imperium ballot. And yeah. These are number 1 votes. So that's really surprising. He did really, really well.
There may be some, some Imperium guys that are, say in the same corp as Innominate or know Innominate really well, that kind of want to shield him from any kind of drop off at this, at least initially. I don't know. That's a kind of like me just speculating and such. Because as Brisk said, you do have to kind of you do need to have a degree of number 1. Like first place votes in order to survive the initial kind of the initial rounds of voting.
So just to hang around,
just to hang around for the trickle.
If I'm not mistaken, I don't know, I thought I heard this last night, but there's a strategy to watch the exit polls that they take internally, right? Like Goonswarm will say, and NC does this and Horde does this too. When you vote, tell us that you voted so we can confirm how many votes we're getting. And at a certain point when they feel they have enough for Aerith, they may say, okay, everybody now vote Merkelchen number 1, Innominate number 2, and Aerith number 3, or something like that. And that way they ensure that they get the right priority of votes for each character to keep them alive through successive rounds. It's not a super complicated process once you figure it out, but essentially you need number 1 votes to survive the early rounds because the people who don't have enough number 1 votes to get on the first 10 ballots just immediately are swept out. And so you can be on every ballot. Like I'm on just about every ballot because there's a lot of courtesy balloting going on out there. There's the trading balloting, and then there's the courtesy balloting. And the first 5 spots are going to be taken by trades, right? These are hard trades. Northern Coalition traded with their enemy, basically, Test. Not enemy, but, rival or whatever. And then Test also traded with the Imperium. The Imperium and NC didn't trade anything except Killah showed up on the Imperium ballot, but that was more of the last few. So, but there's a lot of trading going on between Horde and NC and Test and Legacy, and all those guys are trading. The people who are not trading are Initiative, and I think Pandemic Legion didn't trade. They didn't have a candidate, and they didn't trade votes, but they did put their friends on there. Those are 2 groups that didn't play this game.
Yeah, initiative didn't trade because we for whatever reason decided to go the ideological route and help the the underdogs essentially,
PL not
because
having
we know how that feels.
Hi, Astrathi.
They do.
PL not having a candidate blows my mind, by the way.
Oh, Flood and Killah Bee's here, by the way, as well, in the chat.
Oh, okay. Well, PL not having a candidate is, first of all, they've never had a ballot that I know of, right? So it's kind of like you guys vote for whoever you want, and they would vote sometimes for meme candidates, and they just vote all very undisciplined vote. They vote for whoever they want to, and it's for fun for them. But this year they thought, we're going to actually put a ballot together and try to counteract. I think a lot of this is in response to the Imperium saying that they, or not saying, but the Imperium appearing to have control over the CSM and some of the changes that have come through the game. And that, whether it's true or not, has motivated the North to get together and say, you know what, we have to balance it out. And that's all I heard from Northern leaders was, look, we got to trade because we got to get our guys on because we have to beat back the Imperium CSM. So they're very serious about putting their representation up there to counterbalance the Imperium. It's very political. And as much as I try to explain that it's not really, it shouldn't be a political body, that it's a CSM, it's a player advocacy body. It's not really about tribalism. Nobody wants to hear that. They're very much attuned to the politics infusing the player representation.
So, but okay, help me out here because you have much more better understanding, of the situation than I have, because I've only been tangentially paying attention to this CSM stuff for a while. But it seems to me that last year, I thought it was last year, maybe it was the year before, there was this big, the whole thing was that, I guess PL owns the CSM now. Is this a pendulum? Is this like a Republican Democrats kind of a deal where the PL takes over one year and then the goons are like, well, that can't happen, and then they elect a lot more people and PL stops caring? Or am I just seeing something? Am I wrong?
I see what you're saying by PL not having a candidate. A long time ago.
Hey.
Oh,
I think I'm unmuted now.
What's up, Killah B? You go ahead, Killah B.
I just wanted to say something on the thing on the narrative that was sent out to NC. For example, why people should vote. Mm-hmm. There's no control of the CSM in that sense that people think there is. The reason that Vince sent that out, for example, is because it would motivate people to actually go and vote. Because there's one way you can be sure that most NC members get motivated is if you say we're doing this because it's to counter something with the Imperium, but obviously it's mostly a narrative thing that he does to make sure the people actually bother to vote. Our main issue has always been an NC that, and it started at the top, right? Vince himself really didn't take the CSM very seriously, and lots of the Northern leaders didn't. And this year I pushed pretty hard and said that I wanted to be on again and I wanted to see him support me properly, and he did that. And since he knows how to run his alliance best, he figured that's the best way to get people to vote. I'm not a big fan of the narrative like that myself, but as long as it gets the job done, I think it's okay.
Now, you've been in CSM. What's it like being in the room as a first-year CSM member?
It's not as, you can't be as efficient as the older ones. The first summit is basically just getting to know everybody. So my experience is that I was pretty inefficient and pretty useless at the first summit. I did say something every now and then, but I wasn't really sure how to approach certain devs or how to talk to certain people. Second summit, I was a lot more useful because I had known everybody at that point, and then I could actually give some good input, and I knew which devs to approach and which devs, not bother talking to and all that kind of stuff. So it's yeah, that was. I feel like to be really effective as a CSM, you have to be on for at least 2 terms. So you can basically the first half of the first term, it's just kind of lapsing pretty quickly, and you're not really getting to do anything. Whereas the second half, you can be really useful. So it'd be great to have another term just so I can give some more input to the game,
Yeah,
and then we'll see how things go.
utilize your experience now.
Yeah, and also knowing which devs to talk to in certain issues, it helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely certain devs that so there's definitely a certain there's some devs that really like the CSM and do appreciate the feedback that we give, and there's some devs in some parts of CCP that really don't give a shit basically, and it's obviously something you have to understand first, and you have to find which parts you can talk to and which parts you just not bother wasting any time on basically.
Yeah. Well, yesterday we had a political show and we broke out some of the results. Now this is a very small pool of people compared to the size of Talking in Stations. Plus we broadcasted out to a few other places, but we didn't do an aggressive campaign to try to get a bunch of people on here. You polled really well on this thing. And I think that you're kind of a shoo-in because the North seems to be organized this year, seems to have a lot of motivation to vote. But some of the guys, Vily and I don't know who else, maybe it was Noisy Gamer, said they're not 100% sure that you can make it on there. How do you feel about your chances this year?
Yeah, I think that it gave me a lot of confidence. There was a little hiccup 2 days before the voting opened, where suddenly somebody told me there's some mistakes happened, but then it got fixed. So yeah, I think I'm number 1 on NC and PL,
Oh,
number 2 on Horde.
some mistakes happen
And
where?
well, communication wise, let's just say that. Let's just say that basically. I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And yeah, but it was fixed, and then I think it was. I was actually really surprised by the spot that I landed on the legacy test ballot. Obviously, we did trade our third spot for that, but I obviously liked that, and I thought it was really cool that Vily and Test were open to the idea in the first place. I didn't think that they would be willing to trade votes with us like that, but it was a very pleasant surprise. I don't know if FRT ever really bothered to give out a ballot or tell people to go vote. I didn't really follow that.
Mm-hmm.
But at least according to Vince, he said that he talked to the leader of FRT as well. And I think I have a decent shot of getting in, yeah.
Just with that auxiliary support that you have from different.
Exactly. NC dot alone, I don't think is enough. I think I have a lot more votes from NC internally this year than I had last year, because last year I think it was I think out of all the votes I needed, I think 150 or 200 came from NC, and the rest was from GOTG and Horde or something.
Wow.
So that was a bit embarrassing.
It's abysmal.
I was pretty pissed at that.
It says more about them than you, though.
Yeah, we pushed it really hard this year, and hopefully that will push up those numbers a bit, and then we can see what's going to happen.
Yeah. Mike Azaria, I see you in the audience. If you want to come on, please do. We're on TIS Discord. Jump in. We'll get you dragged in.
Did you do a show covering Skill U and the aftermath of that already? Because I want to talk about that. I think there's something really interesting going on there.
We did a section of it.
Yeah,
I think,
but we didn't. But if you have something to say, it'd be very interesting. Let me just change the graphic out. 1 second.
Vily's here as well and still muted. I don't know if he wants to say anything on the CSM topic before we.
Can you unmute him in case he wants to talk?
Me?
Yeah. Yeah, you.
This is right. This is the thing, right?
Hold on.
You did complain to us before about unmuting people.
Oh, you're
because,
right. No, but you
wanted to control it, and now you want us to unmute it.
I trust. It was Dirk. I didn't trust. I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. So there, Vily's unmuted in case he has anything to say about the. Hey, Vily, are you there?
Yeah.
So what position did you guys give Killah B? Just to be clear, I forget. Was he number 4 or number 3?
I think it was 4, yeah?
That's the first non-tester legacy position, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I think our ticket was myself, Cornet, Dunk, Killah. Is that correct?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
And that ticket and that position actually could be worth quite a bit, which is why
Yeah.
traded it as we did. So
Yeah, that was good. And that was a trade with Northern Coalition, which is kind of odd because you guys are not necessarily allies. You were allies in 2016, 17, but lately you haven't been allies. You've been allies with the Imperium, and yet they're more. It seems like it's split down the middle in who you decided to help with.
I want to point out though at this point that the hostilities between the North, the PanFam, and Test is mostly coming from was mostly coming from PL in the past, and it's just a matter for us of being loyal to PL because we've been friends for them so long.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say that there's necessarily any beef between, at least not on my end, between NC and Test. We just ended up being on opposing sides of the game basically at the moment.
well, I mean, you guys come help. Like the funny thing is, right now, like you guys, are kind of the only thing keeping fraternity up, which is you guys show up for all their timers, kind of thing, right? So it's hard to say you're not. I don't know how to put this. Like there's no beef, but we're definitely enemies on the
Yeah,
field, I
we're
guess you could say.
opponents, but we're not. It's not like I said, I hate Vily. He's such a dick. It's like it's not the case.
I think the key here is that you guys can agree on what nullsec should look like, even if you're fighting over that very space.
Well, that pertains only to the CSM. We're talking about the politics, but I actually want to move over to Vily. We'll let you talk, and then we'll go move on to Skill U.
You're muted or something, Vily. You want to come through?
Let's take a look.
Maybe he's not talking.
I think he's just
All right.
IRL stuff to do or something.
Well, no, wait. What did you want me to talk about?
Oh no,
No.
if there's because I sounded like you were going to say something, so I gave you space. But we can talk about Skill U now. This is very interesting to me, and what actually is happening or happened to Skill U and Killah B. What do you think is going on over there?
Well, I mean, obviously they disbanded, but what I thought was really interesting is that a lot of the co-ops that were in FRT that were in Skill U joined FRT, which I guess makes sense in terms of where they live and everything, and they've been working with FRT a lot. I always thought that there was still quite a big language barrier going on in FRT. I'll be honest, I didn't keep too many tabs on them. Like I didn't really know what was going on within FRT. But I find it interesting that a corp like Know Your Role, which is basically all Germans, it is all Germans. I don't know if their quote Dutch is still there, but it's it's interesting that a German corporation would join a mostly Chinese speaking alliance, and that could mean that there's a growing interest in also from the FRT leadership to just make FRT more international and turn it into more than a one time zone wonder.
Well, I mean, you have to realize that effectively Elo Knight is the leader of fraternity right now, right? So it's not like they're a Chinese coalition the way they used to be. So it's very how do I put this? There's definitely more to fraternity than just the Chinese, and certainly they're fighting a defensive war where you get a lot of free advantages. So it's a little more. They're moving into a situation where they can see at least some interesting content on the horizon. Will that end up getting poisoned? Who knows? But certainly there's reasons for it. It makes sense.
Like I've like my time in Red Alliance, for example. Like I don't speak pretty much almost a word of Russian, but like I've been in like a mainly Russian-speaking alliance. It is possible to do. It's just the whether the actual alliance makes room for English speaking FCs and sort of translations in Russian speaking from Russian FCs in Russian fleets. Like it's entirely doable, and so I think it's completely like especially with Elo Elo there, in US time zone, I think it's entirely possible for non-Chinese, non-Mandarin speaking people to actually be able to be in fraternity fleets.
I didn't
Oh yeah,
really,
absolutely.
I didn't realize how big they had grown. They're now at 12,000 characters, actually close to 13,000 characters. That is huge. It's a different category of alliance.
What can they form in UTZ Vily, FRT, plus allies?
300. Oh, plus you guys, so like
No, not plus us. Ignore us. Basically, them on their own with their like coalition or whatever.
3 to
Sometimes it's not just
400.
FRT, right? It's okay.
I mean, the timer we formed the 1800 for last week there, I think they had 800, but that's like pretty like massive level hype kind of stuff, right? Pretty standard, like the 3 to 400 on a heavy push, and obviously if you insano push, you can bump that quite a bit. But
Yeah. Well, this puts them in a different category of alliance. I mean, how many people they bring really is where the rubber hits the road. So that's what really counts. But on paper, they've grown far beyond Brave's size and are approaching. They're kind of in between Brave and Test at 12,000. You can see what we have on screen there. Test is at 17,000, and Fraternity now at 12,000. Brave still below 8,000. That's huge.
yeah, they're very big, and certainly it's a, how do I put this? They have a myriad of positive things and a myriad of negative things about them. So they're taking it all, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. So skill yourself over here. You can see lost 259. That's probably the balance of their membership. So they're pretty much now dissolved. Do we?
That's not the membership. I think that's a system. If you're on .lan.
Oh yeah, okay. Systems. That's how many systems they dropped. That's right. There's a massive.
They held the most systems in the game.
Yeah,
before they disbanded.
Yeah, that's a gigantic drop. Now, what was the nature of that release? Did they give it all to somebody, or they just unlock it all for whoever wanted it?
All the TCUs blew up. I'm not sure what happened to the IHUBs. I was really like that
Blew
was
up as well.
week. Okay, so everything just blew up over there. That's fair enough.
So they just pulled the plug on themselves and let.
Aside from the renter iHubs, I think they left a bunch of those alive, but everything else blew up.
What kind of like? Why that way of exiting?
Well, nobody really knows. I don't want to speculate too much, but at least I can only talk about Capco, who I communicate with every now and then, and we're planning on playing Classic WoW together. So that's why I'm have talked with him a bit more lately again. And he really just seems done with the game to me. Like, as I can only speak for him. I don't know what happened to Bara or any of the other skill leadership, but Capco left every EVE related Discord that I know. He kind of just disappeared, and yeah, he's just like, I don't want to play this game anymore. And yeah, that's pretty much that. I'm not sure if it's true, but I was told Bara biomassed all his characters as well, which is pretty drastic. But that would probably mean he's done with the game as well. It's kind of sad. People may or not may like or dislike Skillua, but it's in a PvP alliance that was doing quite well as well. That just kind of they made the right call, I guess, on ending it on a high note. As Skillua was doing pretty good, they were getting good fights. They were able to form decent sized fleets and everything. And I just decided to end it all at once. That's interesting. Hopefully, it sends a bit of a signal as well to CCP, maybe.
What do you think?
Did they say anything specific as to why they decided?
I haven't listened to the alliance meeting.
They did say it
on Reddit.
The problem is they kind of quit as a petition vote against some of the mechanics, which is not a terrible move, right? It does make an impression. It does leave that message a little harder. But the reality is, a lot of the things that they're upset about are not things that CCP can do anything about. And they created part of a lot of the problems that they complained about are problems that they were of their own creation. So I don't know if, how do I put this? I don't know if their protest vote will go very far overall.
What do you think they're protesting? Did they say? Somebody said they did say.
Well, they were protesting Sov mechanics and time zone tanks and Citadel mechanics and all the stuff that basically makes it impossible to create content in the game at the sovereignty level, I guess you could.
Yeah, pretty much the fact that it's harder and more and more work to get a more meaningful content. Skill Yourself member on his main, by the way.
You're a Skill Yourself member?
Hey, Laurent is.
Well, I used to be now.
Oh yeah. Where did you end up going?
With my corp, I'm part of Harvey's Dirty Dozen.
Harvey's Dirty Dozen. Did he form a alliance?
No, it's his corp.
Oh.
Jesus Christ, Matterall.
Well, I know. No, I know Harvey has a corp, but it's the Dirty Dozen is not the name of his corp.
Oh, he just said that because I guess it's a saying or something.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you're actually in Peak then?
The Peaky
I am.
Blinders.
The Peakies? Okay, and then you guys have moved into, so now you're with Fraternity, so you're part of the migration in.
Yeah, we're crashing their couch basically.
Mm-hmm. So you figure out what you want to do, right?
Yeah, sort of.
Some good fighters in Harvey's group.
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah, and I'm
good.
there. I'm there to provide balance.
Oh, Mike Azariah has arrived in here. We'll make sure to talk to him. All right, so Skill U kind of, as a protest vote, annihilated all their iHubs and territorial, well, they're not territorial claimant units anymore, but flags basically on the map. And as you can see from this list, there was a substantial amount of space abandoned by these guys as they were leaving. I don't think they screwed over their renters, but they did all the Sov that they had. They just kind of exploded. That is huge. From one of the biggest alliances, the biggest alliance as far as space controlled, to gone the next day. That's a lot. And
so
it looks
who's sweeping up the bits and pieces?
Fraternity looks like they're inheriting the majority of, well, I don't know about majority, but a large part of Skill U. And that's kind of a natural, right?
They're the closest entity to them,
Yeah.
and they're the, how do I put this gently? They're the most apt at running rental, air quotes, regions.
Well, mostly it's geography and content.
Yeah,
Well,
but there's
geography
certainly
is
that NC and BOT could have taken that space as well, right?
I think geography plays a large, a very predominant kind of factor in this, though.
Well, but they also had been, I believe, Skill U had supported Fraternity in the past, so they weren't foreign to each other. So there was already some cooperation and that sort of stuff going on. There's something else I want to point to here. I don't know if you can see it, but over here on the top Sov changes, you have Inner Hell, or Circle of Hell. Is that the? There's a few hells that I'm thinking of, and I'm not sure if these are the wormhole
A couple of
guys
hells out there.
or if these guys are the
Inner
Renter
Hell
Alliance.
are those really great wormhole
Okay,
group,
that's Inner Hell.
Russian.
Yeah,
They run
in Hell are
Lokis.
Russian
Yeah.
groups. Yeah.
So
They're
Circle of
great.
Hell was the renting group, wasn't it? For Skill U, or is that a different group?
Different group, I believe.
All
Different
right.
group.
I thought they were related. All right. Anyway, Fraternity's still under a ton of pressure from you, right, Vily?
Yeah.
What kind of inroads have you made into Fraternity space?
It's mostly about applying pressure at this point and continuing to, keep that pressure up. We've taken like one system, which is a very minor victory, or in the scheme of things. But it's one of those things where when it comes to fighting wars, generally you apply pressure, apply pressure, apply pressure. Nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, and then the back breaks and you've much rather than you continue to grind out system by system for a year kind of thing. This is going to be a very long war because of the way the Sov mechanics work and the time zone tank strength combined with Sino jammers and the inability to do anything about Fortizars. So there's no way this is going to be short in any meaningful way. So
Right.
we got lots on the plan.
Yeah, a few shows ago we talked to ProGod and Elo on the same show, and we were talking about how the jammers work and how they're very difficult to move. It's very difficult to move the ball very far, to put an analogy on it. But if you look at the northern situation, it looks like the Imperium is really just washing over the north because it's like a
Yeah, but
retreat.
when you have a 3-to-1 personnel advantage, it's a anything can be pushed away pretty easily. When it's much closer to 1.2 to 1 or 1 to 1 or in their time zone 0.8 to 1, it's very different.
So the strategy that Fraternity is using to hold you off, would that have worked for the North against Imperium?
No,
It would just be a waste
it would
of
have
time.
slowed them down. Absolutely. Like, the North absolutely could have had a much more coherent Sinojammer wall. They could have manned it better and they could have defended it better. But like, it wouldn't have changed the overall result. They might have taken 2, 3, 4 weeks longer, but the end result would be the same.
Yeah. So anyway, I was watching the messaging coming out of the Imperium, and they seem a little bit upset that the North isn't fighting back. Does that surprise you?
That's not the read I've got off of Reddit. It's been a very bitter week on Reddit against goons this week. Not the reverse.
Oh, really? I haven't read Reddit. But the messaging coming out of the Imperium was that you guys are just rolling over. Like we didn't even, the Imperium saying we didn't even do that coming out of World War B, the Casino War.
Well, they're correct.
Let me get a map up
Mhm.
here.
They did roll over, sort of. They had a couple brawls.
Well, sort of, but it took a good 3-4 months, right? Like, and
Yeah.
they had those massive anti-ADM, what were they, claw fleets or whatever, like 250-man claw fleets for months. Like,
That's
if
true,
both
yeah.
Test and Horde and everyone else had not been grinding the hell out of those timers, it would have taken even months more, right? So, I definitely think the North has chosen to give away a lot of their ability to defend, just in terms of, I don't want to call it laziness, but that's how it kind of comes
It's
across.
pretty much laziness, yeah. There's nobody really around to coordinate our defensive campaign at the moment. I don't really have the time, and well, Vince doesn't have the time either, so yeah.
It's
There's nobody else that could really do it. I guess Headliner could do it, but he's also not around. And it's kind of funny because we had a discussion earlier on like NC in a channel on our Discord where they was like, on the last meta show they said that our leadership was so inactive. But it's kind of true at the moment. I'm not gonna, like, not in the sense that they're inactive in terms of not doing anything at all, but there's nobody. And I had a little bit of a drunk rant on Twitter the other day about that, because it's kind of funny when like I have people in NC approach me, be like, Killah, why aren't we fighting back more? And it's like, yeah, dude, if you pay me a full time wage, if you pay me $3K a month, fucking tax free money, sure, dude, I'll run this operation, I'll run this defense, right? But I can't at the moment. I am just I'm over the point where I'm gonna make my real life suffer over Eve. I have done it 3 times before. I'm not gonna do it again, and there's just not enough incentive for me to do it at the moment. And without somebody investing a lot of time into a campaign like this, when when you don't have overwhelming odds, it's just not gonna work out. And we don't have anyone doing that at the moment, so we definitely made it easier than we could have. But at the end of the day, it's just what it is at the moment. Nothing, at least I can do about it. That's what people don't understand. I tweeted, the tweet that I sent was basically that most of the people don't realize how much time it takes to properly organize and coordinate a defensive campaign or an offensive campaign. It doesn't really matter what kind of campaign it is, but what kind of effort goes into a war like this, and and that I just don't have the time for it at the moment. And that, then if people ask me, why aren't you putting more time into this, Killah? Why aren't we fighting more? Then, go ahead and fucking transfer me money per PayPal or whatever, and we're good. But at the moment, it's not going to happen.
That's another advantage of numbers, is if you have more FCs and more people who can take the load, it's not all on one person. So they're not pointing at someone like you, Killah. They can point at an entire group who can share out the job.
Yeah, I mean, we have a group of FCs, but the problem is that there's really not that many FC. We don't have a lot of experienced FCs at the moment that are capable of taking the difficult fights that we have to. Like, there is fights for us to take, but they're very hard to take because we're outnumbered by a lot. So every fight that we take, you have to tiptoe a lot around the blob. You have to tiptoe a lot around the caps, and that is something that you can't really do without a lot of experience.
I would
So
disagree that, like, one of the big pushes I've had in test over the last year has been to take myself out of the command role and into more of a generalship role. And obviously, I'm adopting uh, real life military kind of command and control essence in terms of providing intent and missions and trying to give the subordinate commanders opportunities to learn and advance and grow and to develop a true command team that we can work with and develop.
yeah, but how are you going to develop us? Like, okay, so let's say I'm going to task our FC group. Your task is to defend a Sotio. Like yesterday evening, there was a Sotio that had a bunch of stuff in build that came out, and let's say I tasked them, hey, you go defend this. There's a bunch of stuff they need to set up that they probably don't know they need to set up. Like, hey, okay, so
Yeah,
you need to set
but
up
that's
sign
exactly it
guns in
though.
advance.
You say, okay, we have this Satio timer hero. You give them real manageable expectations. You say you're not going to save this. I understand. That's fine. But what I want you to do is X, Y, and Z. You need to coordinate A Alpha Bravo Charlie. You need to plan for, Mike November Zulu, right? Like you give them the things to work with. You give them the plan and you help show them and teach them how to learn to do these things, because otherwise when it comes time that they have to do it on their own, they at least have an understanding of how to do it. And I don't know about you, but I've had actual success slowly building FCs who understand all of the extra things that they need to do as a block level FC.
Yeah, it's probably true. Could probably put some more into the learning effort of the people. I'm usually a bit too lazy to teach people stuff at the moment, so that's what I do at my job already. So kind of don't want to do that in Eve.
Vily, you have
But,
a military background, right?
Yeah.
That's why you're saying you're bringing some of those lessons into the.
Well, like there's this common misconception that generals, are the commanders on the field kind of thing, the patents, etc. But in reality, what a general does is provide the mission and intent and the direction for his subordinate commanders, who are colonels and majors, etc. And that is much more at the block FC level what you need to be doing in some cases than being the guy who's running the fleet. And unfortunately, what happens is your good FCs invariably end up at the top of the pyramid and end up doing both the generalship job and the commander job, and it creates this really difficult situation of where you overload those personnel and they invariably burn out because they're trying to do not one job or two jobs but three jobs and four jobs, because they're also doing the jobs of their logistic directors, they're doing the planning jobs of their plans. Like there's so many components of what a block level FC is expected to do and provide. And even myself, and I'm really making massive efforts to try and delegate and find people to do these jobs. It's so difficult, and the communication infrastructure is just not developed in Eve, because the difficulty in trying to overlay these concepts into a volunteer organization of video game players is so difficult.
the problem I say with this at the moment is that I don't think this is a good environment to learn it at all, because you make one little mistake and you're gonna get like blobbed by 400 fucking goons, and
then you're
the entire fleet's
ridiculed.
just gonna whelp.
Right,
And
but
and then nobody's ever going to join your fleet again. And there's nothing I can teach a guy. I can tell him this is what I would do. I can give him every single instruction. And then we had that happen the other day, or it was a couple of weeks back. We had it happen that I basically did what you just said, and then there was like a guy that got caught in a single cap or something at a perch, and then the new FC warped his fleet up there to help it, and he got obliterated.
right,
And
but when that happens, you need to be supportive of that guy and say, "That's fine. It's a learning experience. You paid the
well,
price. You learned," and
yeah,
support him
I
and make
am,
like.
but there's
But
other people that
no,
are
you
allowed to
are,
do
but
it.
but you need to provide the direction as a leader to tell the other people in your fleet, in your coalition, that that is what needs to be done. That is what needs to happen. It is okay that he lost this fight. We need to learn through defeat, because you learn much more from losing than you do from victory, and often as not. And unfortunately, that's
I don't call this
part of the
talks like
problem
that
of
at
Eve.
DL though. In
Well,
NC though, like at the end of the day, I may tell the guy, hey, it's not that big of a deal, a mistake happened, whatever. But then somebody else comes in and rages at him or whatever. It's kind of
Yeah, but
void.
you have
So
to say no. That's not acceptable. You can't rage at that FC. Like we had one of our new skirmish FCs
have you ever tried
lost a
arguing with
fight in.
Vince? Good luck.
Well, then Vince needs to pass off the buck. Like I understand losing is not good in Eve. I really do. Like there's a meme in Test Discord where if you type !Vily, it literally says just don't feed. But that is like you still have to give people opportunities to fail so that they can fail and so that they can also succeed and learn. It's just an unfortunate reality.
But it also seems like what's going on in the north is a different situation than getting a win here or there. I mean, it's just a recipe for failure if you're not already seasoned at picking off parts of a fleet.
No, but it's not. It's not. You have all kinds of this is a recipe for success if you understand it and look at it properly. If you look at it, you have hundreds of timers. You get to pick the spots you defend. You get to say, this is your objective. You don't have to say the objective is to win. The objective can be simply camp a gate, slow them down, get some kills. That can be the whole objective. You just need to give people manageable and meaningful and reasonable expectations, and they will succeed. And that is what builds people up.
Do you think there's a difference between the people that you have to work with and the people that Vince and Killah have to work with? They're the same types?
I think invariably I have more clay to mold, I would say, because there's more people within our organization. But the difference in terms of quality, I would arguably say that they have maybe even higher quality because their average member is significantly older. Maybe that actually is a negative because you have less youthful enthusiasm, but
it's actually a big disadvantage because all these old members do is, I don't know this FC, I'm not joining his fleet. Like our new FCs struggle so hard getting numbers into their fleets. It's so ridiculous. Like a new FC tries to form some sort of bomber gang to harass goons on the way or something. He gets like 10 dudes. Then I go and I ping, and then it's like, then maybe it goes up to 30. And then I leave again because I don't actually, I'm not actually running the bomber fleet myself, or I'm handing it over to the other guy. And then like you see 15 people disappear again. It's just that kind of thing. And that is really something that I've also struggled with within NC that pisses me off a lot.
But that's a cultural problem that you guys need to work on. But to do that, you also need to identify to your members, right? You need to say, it's not cool when, Joe forms a fleet and you all disappear.
We say that. They just don't give a shit. We literally say that every single alliance meeting, every single leadership meeting or whatever we do, we tell them it's important for you to, as corp leadership, to go to your corps and make sure that your corps support. And we do it on alliance level as well. After like every fleet that I do, at the end of it, I promote the upcoming fleets. And I tell people to join them regardless of, it might be being a new FC or something, but it doesn't help. It's one of those things I've struggled with in NC ever since I joined, is that it's very hard in NC to motivate people to do anything at all. I'm not saying this we have a decent sized FC group. Our like skirmish FC or whatever you want to call it group probably has like a good 10, 15 guys in it, which for our size is pretty solid. The problem is that they're not really getting the numbers that they need to get shit done. And that's really a problem that I'm not really sure how to figure it out, because I've tried a lot in NC to fix it, and none of my attempts to fix it have worked, basically. Is my problem at the moment.
Is it a question of morale? Is it
people? No, it has nothing. Like, it doesn't matter if we're winning or losing. Every time we won a campaign, every time things were going well, it didn't change a thing. It's just it's just a thing where what used to be an advantage, having old players that have a lot of skill points, that have a lot of money, it's just not an advantage anymore. And now, in my opinion, it's a disadvantage, because all these people, and I appreciate that that's a thing that happens to everybody, but a lot of our core members are 30 plus. They have a kid, they have a woman, they have at least one kid, I guess. They have a house, they have a job. They only get to play the game for a couple hours a day maybe, and for some reason they decide, okay, look, I'm not going to join some random ass quote unquote FC's fleet because I'm not sure if that's going to provide me with any fun. I'd rather just play fucking Dota, Auto Chess, or some other shit instead. And that's the problem. and that's why and we're working on it. Like, we've opened up our recruitment a lot lately in NC. We basically deleted our recruitment standards. We just told all the corps, hey, you can recruit whoever you want now. We don't care anymore. As long as, they can pilot a fucking Ferox, they're good to go. And hopefully that will bring some fresh blood into the ranks that actually wants to log in and play the game more than half an hour a day. But yeah, it's very much a problem. Our age in NC at the moment is probably one of our biggest weaknesses, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, and I would think that like part of the problem is, as you just said, you are trying to recruit new players or whatever, but if you also are not giving them the opportunities to grow, it to me it seems very obvious that they're going to choose other routes. I think that's why you're seeing so much success in Horde,
Yeah.
who has continued to grow and grow and grow, and Goblins has definitely done an incredible job in managing that organization. I've heard some of his, I'm not going to say anything, but yeah, no, like not like he has a tendency towards, I want to say isolated leadership, maybe is what I've heard, or he doesn't delegate super well. Like, he's got a trusted group of core directors, but nobody else gets in there. But and maybe that's exactly what he needs in Horde with so many people. I don't know. It's not my organization, but to me, like the problem is that NC is so old and so set in their ways. Kill board stats matter, transferring keep stars, etc., etc. All those things that
That was
had their
actually PL, not us. I want to say that real
Okay,
quick.
well, that's LOLPL.
We didn't even
But
rip out our rigs when we lost our keep stars. We left them with rigs.
yeah, I would take pride in the fact my keep stars properly fit versus like.
Yeah.
But
Died with his shoes on.
yeah, no, exactly. But you definitely, I feel, need to have a way for the new players who have all the enthusiasm to take over from the old guard. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with NCPL, where you have these older players, these enfranchised people who are not stepping aside and letting the new blood take the reins.
Yeah. It's difficult. It's difficult to deal with. I've tried working on it still. And I think Vince is starting. He started. Last year was really important. Last summer was really important when we lost X47 and when that whole thing happened. That was kind of a wake-up call for him as well, I feel, where he sort of started to realize, okay, look, the way we play the game or we used to play the game just doesn't work anymore. He was one of the biggest. When I joined NC from PL, and in PL we were already mining pretty actively at the time. We were having a good time hanging out on Mumble, just mining together when there was nothing going on. And I joined NC and I started basically doing that in NC. And at the time, there was no real organized crabbing going on. There were no crab fleets, nothing. So I started running crab fleets because it's just way more efficient. Have everybody in one fleet, be able to respond properly. And Vince literally poked me. I still have it somewhere. He said, "I'm not gonna let you turn NC Dotted into a crab alliance, by the way." And I was like, "Bro, this is what needs to happen. Otherwise, we're just gonna eat shit." And he didn't really want to hear it. And then last summer happened, and he was like, "All right, fine. It has to happen." So that was good in that sense. Last summer was definitely a wake up call to a lot of people in the north, I think. And it's kind of funny because the north, especially people in PL and stuff, used to say adapt or die when somebody would whine that they were too strong or they abused the mechanics too much. And now it's like the shoes on the other foot, basically, right? Now we have to adapt or we're gonna die, because if we don't start playing the game the way it's supposed to be played in 2019, we're just gonna end up being, snuff.
Well, skill you, right?
Well, that's the other thing. Is like a lot of people talk about the need to work mine, etc. I don't think that is something that you do need to adapt to. I do, however, think that it's something you need to acknowledge. If you look at groups like Snuffbox doesn't, work mine. They focus on different aspects and their activity, etc. And as much as I'm not a fan of Snuff at the current moment, there's definitely a case that they have chosen a model and they're succeeding with it, and that doesn't necessarily involve a heavy industrial base.
But they're also not really like, okay, look, I guess I have to define what NC wants to be. NC wants or striving to be a relevant 0-0 player, right? You can, and I wouldn't consider Snuff a relevant 0-0 player. because they live in Losec. But that's kind of what NC wants to be, and for that to work, we have to play the game like that. Otherwise, we could. I agree. Like Matterall said, we could decide to go down the skill U path. Skill U was in a pretty unique position as well. They made a very large amount of money that that kind of just was given to them. This is the usual stuff with drones, where nobody really wants to take drones, and whoever holds it makes a bunch of money with it by renting it out. So it's a different position to be in. But Skill U definitely did really well at the full PvP model. Yeah, for sure.
The big problem with Skill U is that they chose to effectively block themselves in with blues. I want to say, kind of, they created a situation where there was no local content, which is the exact model you want for an industrial alliance, right? Or an alliance with a strong industrial base. But they were a pure PvP alliance, right? And it created this natural kind of conflict.
Well, that's interesting. They don't want
I've
their
only
guys
been
far.
Skill U for like, well, I was in Skill U for like 3-4 months, and we had tons of content.
Right, you did, and you just, but the problem is you killed it off, right? You guys did really like
No.
the only content you guys had left at the end was through Fraternity's border or into the north through GOTG.
And Harvey's here from
Yep.
Peak.
Hello.
He'll tell you better than me.
Hey, Harvey. Turn you up there.
Go from MTO which goes into venal and tenal, all the way down to helping out fraternity in like 10 minutes. The size of the empire between those jump bridges made absolutely no difference.
Well, geographically, it looks a certain way.
Yeah, I know, but geography's fucked now, basically, because of jump bridges. Geography is now irrelevant. You draw your own geography with jump bridges, and you can get from the KQK, the Keepstar Lagoons are in at the moment. You can get from that all the way around. If they wanted to and linked up the ACLs, you could get from there all the way around to Fraternity's border, probably doing under 20 jumps, like gate jumps or Ansiblex jumps. I don't know the actual numbers, but it's not very many jumps considering how far that is.
Correct, but once again, there is the issue of what happens with many of the, I guess I'll call them apex predators, which I believe Skill U is they kind of kill off all of the minor predators until there's only them and apex predators left. At the end, Skill U had choices of fighting Legacy all along the Fraternity border.
I agree, but what are you suggesting? That people don't go and fight people?
No, I'm suggesting that
just
if
the
you're an entity
nature
that's
of the
entirely
game.
PvP based, you need to be more careful at the speed and way in which you kill your enemy.
In other words, you need to become better farmers of other groups.
And you can't get any better than how skilled you were. Like we went and defended an Astra House. The last fight, there was a video of it. The last fight that we had, we went and defended an Astra House in Tenal against all of Deadco, GOTG, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And one only losing about 10 dictors. Now, what do you suggest we do? Send a couple of the battleships in to die? You guys
I'm not
turn
talking
around.
I'm not talking about Deadco. Deadco was a prime fishing ground to go after if you guys would have wanted to.
It was still there. Yeah.
Let's actually shift over to talk about darkness, if it's okay. What's going to happen to Sword Dragon after all this?
Good question.
I mean, he's going to face some form of pushback probably from NC and PL, but at the end of the day, all this stuff is timed for AUTZ, and the ADMs will all be 6. If not now, they will be by the time that happens. So it doesn't make any difference what anyone wants to do about it, really, other than goons who have the coverage in that time zone. It doesn't matter what NC and PL really want to do against GOTG and Deadco. It doesn't matter that GOT and Deadco couldn't fight against somebody, even if the world was flat and the time zones didn't exist. It doesn't make any difference if they're timed to AUTZ and everyone's at work. It doesn't make.
It's not really true at all, though.
Why not?
You can
I just
absolutely
been out there.
Well, sure, but you can absolutely oppress and destroy an alliance without even touching their Sov. We're in the process of doing that now with Fraternity, right? It takes time and takes effort, but you can absolutely destroy an alliance without taking any of their sovereignty.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you could.
Well,
I just don't see that happening. I
just
guess
to
maybe.
just to clarify for people that don't understand, that Dead Coalition that has darkness in it, and Sword Dragon is their leader, is a Australian time zone group. So with things timed late into the night for U.S. players and early in the morning for European players, it's very difficult to get a big group to fight against that. And if that's your time zone coverage, then you're pretty safe in defending. So that's what Harvey
The
was talking
time
about.
zone tank.
Yeah, the time
Yeah,
zone tank.
And make no mistake, point the blame directly at Citadel's 2.0, right? Because that's, I mean, other than Sov timers, you can force onto the weekend, but you can't force any Citadel timers onto the weekend anymore.
Yeah. So here's an interesting point that nobody really talks about in the Fraternity War. Test and Legacy are hitting a grand total of zero Fortizars, Citadels, etc. Like none, because there's zero reason to do it. There's no actual gain in doing so. Like you create a timer which comes out in your enemy's time zone, you give them all the advantages, and even if in the strange situation you actually win the timer, you fight through it, you win this big timer. Next day they put up a brand new one. Ta-da! Right? Like there's 0 reason to go after Citadels in the game currently. The only Citadel that's meaningful in any way is Keepstars, and they are so insanely defensible that nobody would ever fucking imagine it.
And so what we end up with is another situation where there's only one way to do things now, basically. Well, I guess there is two, but then in the north it's different, right? But that's because there's a massive blob versus a smaller blob, so it's not really
The
the
number
same.
inequity is so out of whack.
Yeah, it's not really relevant. But the only way to have like a proper contest war where there's two sides relatively even is a farming campaign, like you say. You put your own structures down in your time zone, and then you sit in amongst their space and farm them until they give up or I don't know, start arguing with each other or whatever.
Well, no, as I'm sure you've, I think you talked about how we were doing it in against Fraternity even already before in another show. You put the Citadels down, you start farming, that creates pressure around those Citadels. Those ADMs go down. People mine and do things less in those areas. They hunker down in other areas. You farm them there, and you just keep that pressure up until the ADMs are so low and the Sov is so undefended and nobody wants to deal with defending in that area that all of a sudden you can take the Sov in that area. Then you take the Sov and Sov sovereignty, and then you just continue pushing forward over and over and over again until the enemy breaks, basically.
And then you do what you just accused Skill you of doing, right? You over farm and you've
But
lost your content.
I'm not a PvP alliance. I'm not trying to farm them. I'm trying to kill them.
Okay.
To be honest, he accused
So it's
Kill you of having too many blues.
maybe, I don't know.
Once again, for a PvP alliance, is Test the same type of alliance as Skill yourself?
No, not at all.
No, exactly.
You can make the same. It depends, because if I was under the impression, previously that you were saying, or from your camp, it was saying that this is, you don't want to get rid of Fraternity in your border because they're the content that, they're excellent and they fight and they do a bit of feeding and everyone has, all sides have a good fight and it's great and everything. You wouldn't want to get rid of them. I'm pretty sure Pro God has said that. I don't know if you had or not. But if now what you're saying is that you're trying to destroy them and invade the turret and get rid of them, then so be it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is my overall plan, right? Is not to just purge Fraternity from Detroit, but the entirety of the South. Will I achieve that goal? I'm gonna say probably not, but that is my desire, right? Is to see Fraternity, that giant purple blob, pushed entirely out of the southern region.
Let's look into Fraternity. I want to see what groups have joined, corporations that have joined.
It's Peak, Crystalline, Know Your Role, and there's a fourth one, one of the less relevant ones. I can't remember what it is. Do you remember who the fourth one is?
Avalanche.
Avalanche, yes. Oh yeah, the less relevant ones. That was unintentional. The dig at the former Test Corp.
So rude. There's also
Digital Dopamine, Pal Dave's Corp that were in Volta. They're in fraternity.
Oh, they're coming as well. Yeah.
Yeah, they were there before we were.
Sturm Grenadier.
Oh yeah.
That's a German group, isn't it? Or no, Sturm
Yeah.
Grenadier. It's a gaming
No,
community.
those are the 4 corps from Skill Yourself that joined, and as
Yeah.
I kind of said in I think my recent update, it's both a win and a loss for us, right? Because we win in the fact that Skill Yourself as a large entity is not going to be coming to support Fraternity, but we lose because Fraternity will be always a tiny bit stronger, right? So it's both a win and a loss for us in terms of how the campaign is going. Will it be more of a win or more of a loss? It's hard to say at this point.
Yeah, well, hopefully, not to give too much away from my side, but hopefully, because it's a farming campaign and it's all about just having people undocked, between the fleets, between the pings, is when it really counts in a farming campaign, in my opinion, in occupying and just sort of dominating an area. Corps with like the ones that are like ours, basically, we excel at that. We're not very good at being ping warriors, but we'll dominate an area very effectively by just putting the hours in and hanging out and not feeding. And so I've been down for 2 days and I already basically own 77S and 4060p to a degree as well. So hopefully going to push back everywhere, shut down. Not sure how it's going in 03. When I arrived, there was like 20 test guys hanging out 1,000 kilometers off the keepstone.
Yeah,
That's going to come to an end.
It's going to come to an end, is it?
Yeah, the structure will still be there, but they'll either have to sit on it, in it, or
Well, I'll tell you
somewhere
what.
else.
The guys that have been camping 03 have been there for almost a month now.
Yeah, I know, but I haven't
They
been there for
live
a
they
month.
live out of the little Astra that could, and even this morning they got 3 more dreadnoughts. It's like the shit never ends, man. Like, and they got a 20 billionist caller yet the day before. Like, you're welcome to try and shut them down, but I think you will find that they are incredibly resilient.
Are we talking about Scalding Pass, or what area are you in, Harvey?
03 TAC 4 is the staging system of Fraternity in Dutch.
Yeah, so in 03, there's a test gate camp that sits on one of the main gates in there, and they use the Astra, the little Astra that is their little staging, and obviously it can't really be removed because it's single point objective, time zone tanked, single point objective, and Legacy have more on that time zone basically. So it stays, but who gets to sit on the gates is what really counts.
I think you will be eminently surprised how little importance the gate control can be if people are getting themselves fleet warped to the Astra over and over again.
Yeah, that still works on people is surprising me. I worked with a PL Titan the other day, so there's that. 2 actually.
2, yeah.
Well, I think one tried to save the first one, or they both got fleet warped.
They both got fleet warped.
Oh. So if you're in a Titan, turn off your fleet warp.
Killah, do you know if it's true that Doom's quit the game, or did he just give up CEO and like taking a step back for a
I
while?
have no idea, man. I don't know with Doom. Like, it's very hard. Sometimes he just makes those trolls of pings for fun or posts or whatever. But I think this could be the one. There was a
He doesn't.
bit of a snafu with him lately.
He doesn't seem to be enjoying himself the last year or so, anyway. So perhaps it's for the best.
What snafu?
That's none of your business.
Oh, come on! Just
arguing
between a few
arguing
friends
over
here.
whose fault it is. I'm just arguing over whose fault it was, passing the blame around. Mistakes were made, I'm sure.
I just read his tweet and his Twitter history, and you'll figure it out.
All right, I'll try to get that up on screen. I'm just trying to understand. So you never know if he's leaving the game or not, but he has been. He seems to have been disappointed since what, X47, or there was a time where he said the servers were trash and people were really.
Well, the thing is,
surprised.
he's usually complaining, right? But him complaining doesn't mean that he's actually unhappy, because he does complain every now and then. That's just fine. Like, it's just he likes to express his complaints very loudly, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that you have to accept, and I never had an issue with personally. But at some point. I don't know how much Doom. Like, it's unlike what people think. There's some people out there that claim to be PL experts, but it's actually kind of hard to know what's going on within PL without being in PL. Like, even me, who has been with PL and has pretty much seen all sides of PL in my time there, I have no clue what's going on in PL at the moment. I couldn't tell you at all.
Well, here it
So I don't know.
is from Headliner on this thread from Doom to Killah. It says, "Give people what they want, Doom. Tell them it's all my fault. I'm killing the Alliance." And I think, I don't know if that's a joke. I think that's a joke. Seriously, though. And then he goes on, "Thank you very much for what you've done for the Alliance." So I guess that's a taunting of the readers. And then Doom to Killah says, "At the end, it's no one's fault but my own and not being able to go with the times." So who knows? If it's a gag, it's kind of it's like a high effort gag.
Like the time he convinced half of Eve that his cop was being robbed.
Yeah, right. So he says, "I didn't always agree with Dan Cool and Headliner, but I respect them as friends. I wish no ill will to PL or Eve. This is my time to end it. No burning bridges, just a portion of my life ending."
Sounds pretty
Well, there you
sincere
have
to
it.
me.
Yeah, it does. And he also left TIS Discord, and I was like, that's curious, but that doesn't surprise me. When people quit, it looks like they kind of turn everything off, and so they leave.
You have to, otherwise you get sucked back in. There's no way you can
Yeah.
quit Eve without staying
Yeah.
connected with like the media and everything around it. You just get sucked back in. If you want to quit Eve, you have to do it permanently. And there's people like, this is not confirmed or anything, but I still think to this day that Noobman did what he did to, just have a way out and be done with the game.
Like, yeah, we'll call that suicide by cop, where you put yourself in a position to be eliminated.
Well, like he was, I was talking to him a couple of weeks before that happened, and he was like, "I'm really happy not having played Eve for a while." And he literally told me the only thing I'm a bit worried about is getting sucked back into Eve, right? Like that's a thing, and maybe he just wanted to have a permanent way out where he knows that he will never have the ability to really play the game anymore, and that's why he pulled that plug. But I feel like that's what you have to do if you want to quit Eve.
I gotta go. There's some nerds to frag. Let's catch you
Do it.
later.
Later, Harvey. Harvey cracks me up. I'm a murderer. All right. Well, where did the time go? We didn't get to talk about other stuff, but this has been a really interesting episode of a chill stream to go over all the stuff that's going on and some of the changes in nullsec. I think it's fascinating, Killah B, a lot of the stuff that you were saying with Vily about how you think it's an advantage to have really experienced seasoned players, but in this game or in this era, it's not really an advantage. What you want is eager, moldable players that show up for fleets regardless of who the FC is.
Yeah, pretty definitely. Like that's very well summarized. It used to be an advantage, but now it is not anymore. I don't think it is. I really, as my heart, like my biggest struggle in C is exactly that. Like there's people, they have their ways, they played it, they have been playing this game for 10 years. They don't want to play it any different way anymore, and you can't convince them of playing it any other way. And yeah, it doesn't work. We'll have to change.
That's fascinating. It's very interesting. All right. Well, so you guys are clear. The Eve North is coming up at this weekend. It's a Saturday and it's a Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday. Let's have a look at it.
I think most people are thinking it's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday thing.
Yeah.
But probably Saturday and Sunday.
It's a Saturday, Sunday officially, but things will happen on Thursday and Friday. So tonight and tomorrow, people are already arriving and they're tweeting, and you can see that we have a channel for them in Discord. So that's if you're looking for people to meet up with, Talking in Stations Discord, there's a channel open while the duration of Eve North is happening. And you can rendezvous there. We have Elise Randolph who's going to be doing interviews of CCP while he's there. So we'll have some content for you guys at that point. And we have a couple, I think Silver's going to be there from Talking in Stations and a few others. So Elise, Silver, and I'm not certain who else. so you can see them there. Okay, so that's this weekend. And the first thing they're going to do is have the keynote. So Saturday morning, that keynote will contain new updates to EVE Online that they talk about, or new announcements, but also the CSM results, which will be pretty exciting. Although a lot of it looks like it's already, at least the first 5 spots are already decided, just because of the enormous interest that nullsec had this year. Well, what else is
Sounds
there?
about right.
Yeah.
I mean, the kind of the invasion meetups have always been a kind of like a moment where new aspects of the Triglavian invasion has kind of like either occurred or like, you know, some announcements around that sort of thing has happened. So I don't know, maybe there's something new to come to the Triglavian invasions. Like I know that we've seen the you know, people have seen and fought against the World Arc already, and beaten it as well to some degree. I don't know whether there's going to be harder versions of that or not, but you know, we'll see in time, obviously.
Yeah, we've seen that over the past few days in the patch notes. Something happened with the major conduits, and they weren't spawning, and if they were, they weren't completing. But as of yesterday, the major conduits are spawning, and you can complete them normally. And the World Arc spawned as well, which is that ship that we saw. This monster ship, the size, like of a Keepstar, spawning endless waves of ships. And we saw a big one spawn yesterday, and we didn't get quite to that, but we saw a bunch of people there. And we were doing some major conduits last night. So I think that's what we might be doing tonight, but I'm not sure. Because of our really
Tonight
bad
on
tonight on
Talking
the
in
midweek show.
on what show?
Yeah. The midweek show, your show, Talking in Stations.
Oh, I thought we're on hiatus though.
Oh, yeah. I think we're still going to do something. We can't stay away. Like this invasion stuff is so fun.
It's too much fun. Yeah. Let me drag Hank. That's so funny. I said Hank. Mike back in here. Mike Azaria, are you here? Or did you take off?
I'm still here.
Oh, nice.
Hey, I just want to touch base with you because you're a different kind of candidate. You're not from one of these nullsec groups, and you haven't bartered your way onto ballots and stuff like that. Yet you are tracking really well in the Talking in Stations poll.
Yeah, I think either your poll is just from people who follow, like you guys were saying, Dunk was saying last night, self-selected sample is very questionable at the beginning, but I've been active in the community doing things like the bus continuously, so it's not so much I've been running a campaign as I'm just a known person.
Providing meaningful content that people enjoy and appreciate.
Yeah, so it's, I'm fighting to keep the game going, and that's why I'm running for the CSM. I can't remember who asked me. Might have been you, Matterall. With so many high-sec people running, did I think that was a hazard to have a lot, like we'd wind up hurting each other by running against each other, split the vote, that sort of thing?
I think I didn't do any interviews this year, but it could have been our group that asked you that question. And you answered when Jin Tan, who interviewed only a select group of people, asked a question about monetization and CCP and how that was controversial. You answered the question beautifully well, as opposed to me in contrast.
I really wish I could remember what I said, but then usually I do all my answers off the cuff, so to speak. I don't have talking points. The running joke is the reason I've lost so many elections is I refuse to be a politician. I'm stepping up and volunteering to help out. And if people decide, yeah, he could be helpful, then they elect me. If they don't, then elect somebody else. But monetization for me still comes down to the game does have to make money. because there's a lot of nice people in Iceland that I've met and I would like to see continue working. And I'm not just talking about the devs and the people who fly off to the various shows, but the day-to-day people. I got to know the secretary because I find the meeting rooms for CSM kind of stifling at times. So I would step out onto one of the balconies just to get air. So I'd wind up talking with the secretary every time I passed through. And for them to get paid, Noisy, if he's still about, would probably have, I think he sometimes looks at the annual financial statements, but at one point there were 300 employees for CCP.
Mm-hmm.
So the monetization does have to happen. It's just, if it's funny, one of the people I'm running against, Olmeca, although I'd love to see Olmeca Gold get in as well, is the term whaler. And he was using it in an in-game term, but it also is a monetization term where a lot of the mobile apps and that sort of thing go for the whales, which is the one player who buys the $500 worth of diamonds or whatever the high-end monetization is.
Mm-hmm.
And and then they accept that the rest of people are playing for free. That may work for a mobile app, but I really think I've seen people say, well, that'll work for CCP too. No, it won't. It honestly, you can't depend on one or two people buying 5,000 plex to cover for the rest of people going full free to play. It's a bad idea. And the people who suggest that really need to look almost at the financial statements at CCP. When it was a public company or when it had shareholders, it had to publish its financials. And you look at that, how much money they have flowing through. You can't go free to play. But if they go the opposite direction, try to monetize everything, go down the golden ammo route like World of Tanks, I think a lot of players would leave and they'd wind up having a burst of money for a very short period of time, and then everybody gets pissed off and they have a dead game on their hands.
Yeah. Well, like I said, eloquent and non-controversial. Good job. But
I'm not trying for a mom and apple pie. I'm just saying,
multiple.
I'm trying to look at the game for something that I would like to see running past my death. And I'm not announcing I'm about to die. I'm just saying that this is a game that's lasted 16 years. It would be nice if it lasted another 16, that it became an institution. There's only a few games that can lay claim to that as far as I'm concerned, or have a shot at that. World of Warcraft is one. I honestly don't know if any shooter is going to, or MOBA game is going to manage to last as they keep coming out and that sort of thing. But EVE Online, EverQuest seems pretty much, I don't want to call it dead, but it has a very small niche community now.
Yeah. And this, EVE Online in some senses, you have to have people in it to make it feel like it's worthwhile even playing. So it's not, I don't know what that low number is. Like, can 1,000, 2,000 people playing EVE Online make it feel like it's worth your time for other people? And
it's one of the classic lines of, if they're not charging you for something, what's being sold is you.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, I think CCP managed to find almost a break in that rule where they're charging, but still what's being sold is us. It is the community that makes this game. EVE would be and is a very boring solo game. You have to have you have to be focused on something to play it. But if you just played it as an industry in a Farmville in space and played PI all by yourself without having the worries of other players happening around you, then it would be a game you'd play for 6 months, a year, and then slowly lose interest. This seems too much like work, and you would quit. And that kind of thinking came up even earlier in the conversation when you had Vily and Killah talking, that the FCs almost feel like it is a second job, and a very demanding one at that. It's not even got a regular 9 to 5 shift. It's, oh God, a timer's coming up. I don't care if you have a christening or it's the middle of the night. We need you now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wake up at 3 a.m, get on this, and
Yeah.
make sure everybody else, and then be disappointed that not everybody else did that. They're all sleeping while you're up trying to make something happen.
Yeah, and that kind of, but it's the interpersonal reaction. The game there, even as they were talking about, I was thinking the game there was not what was happening in the game. It was the interpersonal reaction of the people. And I did agree with what Vily was saying about, education and growing your base. You want to have a pyramid where it's got nice even slopes to the sides, and it almost, I was picturing that and trying to figure out what the opposite, and it sounds like Vily's organization almost sounds more like an antenna where it's got a nice cement base and then this tall thin spike that everybody's depending on, a very few people up that pole, so you don't have the support. If you lose part of it, it falls apart.
Right.
That's a really bad visual, but I'm sorry.
No. I get it. Hey, you're from
But
Canada. This next Fan Fest is in Toronto. Is there any chance you're going to be there, or are you on the other side of Canada?
I'm on the other side of the continent. I'm on an island on the other side of the continent.
Oh,
And I really was
Victoria?
hoping, I'm in Victoria, yep.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
And I was really hoping I could manage to do it, but we just, in our house, had a drainage problem, and I just paid $30,000 to get the drains totally redone on my house. And
Wow.
even though 30,000 Canadian may not be that much in real money,
Oh, that's a
it
lot.
still is a big bite for a retired person. So yeah, I'm not even sure. I would have loved to have gone to Eve Toronto. I'd love to make it to Eve Vegas, but our budget just got kicked right between the legs, and hard and repeatedly.
Yikes. Oh, that's too
So
bad.
I'm going to be watching the streams this weekend and hoping for results. But somebody was asking what I thought my chances were on the side chat, and I put myself at about a 25% chance right now. I was surprised how I pulled out on the exit poll, but I also watched you guys last night, the chat you were having, and I agreed that there's way too many locked up slots by the nullsec alliances.
Yeah.
And when we have this group of maybes who are competing, they had 9 maybes competing for 2 or 3 seats. That puts you at about a 25 to 33% chance if it was just random selection, and it's not.
Yeah, we have. Let me make that bigger so people can see it. We had kind of the middle, the people who were kind of competing for those extra spots. I wish we had Vily's drawing. It was actually really good. These aren't necessarily people competing for the middle spot. This is just what we polled. And if you take out the major block candidates, it's kind of who's left. Again, ignore my number. That's pretty high. My chances of getting on are, I would say, about 0 to 5%. It just totally, but it's a complete mystery because I don't know how many people voted that are fans of the show that heard me ask for their vote and did it without telling me or without, or I don't know. I think a lot of people might have put me in various positions on their ballot just as a goodwill measure, and that stuff doesn't really help until later on. But you
I
have
put you on my ballot too.
You did? Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
of course I did.
I put you on mine. We're friends. And you have a constituency that doesn't really, I mean, you're one of the hardest constituencies out there. These are people that don't really participate in the extra Eve stuff, the media, this kind of thing, the streaming. Your constituency are new
Also,
players.
I have a constituency. A lot of the people I deal with on a day-to-day when I'm playing is alpha accounts, because I have a lot of involvement in the new player experience. And as a result, the people who know me the most can't vote. They don't have the ability to cast a vote. So the only way that the Magic School Bus will help me with the election is if these people converted to Omega and still remember back to. But it's funny how many people, when I'm chatting or even in the side chat, there'll be people that say, I still have the coercer you gave me 2 years ago, or still have the algos. So I'm hoping some of that'll bleed through. But I've made it a right proper point to, I did not mix campaigning with the bus. If I was on a bus run, I did not talk election at all because I wanted to keep that separate. One is something that I'm going to do and continue doing whether I'm elected or not. And I didn't want to make it seem like my free stuff was free with a condition, because it never has been.
Right. Yeah, that was a tough decision. If McLeod, if you're still here, you can weigh in on this. For us, was nobody inside of Talking in Station's crew had any idea that I was going to run, including myself. And so when I announced, it caused a lot of problems because now we were going to do these interviews, and how do you do that? So I asked if somebody would take that up. Artemis and McLeod did, and they did the interviews with the help of the other crew members, and it worked out really well. With a few snafus, and we did an after-action report on how we could improve it, which was really good. Artemis did that. But it was also a question of my own personal leanings. Like, hey, I have this broadcasting platform where you do streaming, and I have a mail list of hundreds of actual heartbeats, right? Who knows how many accounts they have? And we have, 2,500 people that are in the Discord, so conversation can go in a certain way. But I really had to separate out what I wanted to do personally with what Talking in Station wants to do as an entity. And it sounds like you had that same challenge.
Yeah, and it is an ethical one, which probably a lot of the nullsec alliances are laughing at, that we're trying to do. We're making these ethical decisions where they're saying, screw that, backroom deals, buy the votes. I mean, you guys were openly talking about Judge buying votes last year, and so was everybody else, and saying that's the way the game's played. And if you want to handicap yourself and tie a weight to your ankles and still try to run, go for it, but you're a moron. um, and they, as far as they're concerned, we should be leveraging every contact, every ability we have, and to try to keep a conflict of interest from happening. We're doing stupid stuff by the accepted norm of Eve politics. And I'm going, yeah, you're probably right, but I'm going to do it this way anyways, because this is how I want to play. And if I can win by playing by my rules, then hell, I'm doing better than you are. Think of what would have happened if I did play it dirty.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'd call it dirty. It's just more like without any constraints, without any
real politic.
Yeah, and I think and I ran against that too, because I thought, well, I'm going to lose unless I either leverage the platform and use it as a beacon, or play their game and try to see how much goodwill I have among them. So I went ahead and did one and not the other. I went ahead and asked them, saying, hey, I'm going to be running for CSM. If you have any room on your ballot, let me know. And I did that with all the alliances except the Imperiums. And that was enough to get just a cursory mention, right? None of them are really going to be effective voting positions that I'm in. But it was a sign of respect, or a sign of relationship. Basically, it was a sign of relationship.
Yeah, hell, way back when in one of the elections, the Imperium, at that time Goonswarm, put me at number 14 on the ballot, or 13 on the ballot, when it went that long. So they put me at the bottom of the list, but I had not asked for that. They just put me on there, and I'm going, what the hell was that about?
Yep. And
I hate to cut this short.
Yeah.
Sorry, but like I said earlier on the text in Discord, I've got real life stuff, so I got to get booting out right now.
I do too. It was nice talking to you, Mike. Good luck. We'll see you after Saturday and see where you land.
Yeah, well, I'll hoist a drink whether I win or lose.
Either way. All right.
Thanks a lot.
Sure. Last thing I want to say is that we didn't, contrary to what Bobby Roberts here says, I didn't vote for you because you leveraged the platform, not a trusted neutral source anymore. That to me is a narrative coming out of Imperium lately. That is, I see it. It seems to grow, and you guys can grow it all you want. But we've never said that we're like a neutral entity. You guys have bestowed that upon us. We don't define ourselves. You guys define us, and by you guys I mean the audience. So whatever you think is what we are is totally fine. It's not. We're not asking you to believe that we're a thing or not a thing. What we show you is what it is. And who we invite and how we talk to them and whether we put them together to challenge each other or not is just a matter of editorial decision making. Sometimes you can't put people together because they start fighting. Sometimes shows evolve a certain way where you have one FC from one side and he wants a friend to come with him, or we think it'd be good chemistry to have his friend with him and we bring that person on, and next thing you know, you have a show with 3 or 4 FCs from only one side. That's the way these shows develop, and it's not necessarily an agenda. But the platform I don't think was utilized. My chill streams are chill streams, and I guess in that way, yeah, but there was no broadcast to vote for Matterall specifically. There was no pings to do that. There were no, the shows had very little of me saying like, vote for me if you decide to or whatever. And we didn't have any shows dedicated to showcasing what my thinking was and what my issues were, or even me responding to issues that other people had. So I feel pretty good that Talking in Stations was not used as a platform to get me on CSM, whether it worked out or not. I think that was actually pretty good. And I think Talking in Stations has a balance of people on it, right? We have people from all over EVE Online and different game styles as well. So it's not really an issue of a design or desire to put narratives forward. It's very much a reflection of what, the content is that's available to us. And I think media gets a lot of, EVE Media gets a lot of, and I've worked in it more than anybody, but there's a flack that it gets for being biased or non-biased or anything like that. And really it's just a victim of whoever can do the labor to get the word out about a thing. And that's really what it comes down to. Ask anybody who worked in it or has worked in it in a long time. Okay, I think that's all the time we have. It's nice to have you guys.
I mean,
Oh,
we're about as neutral as it can possibly get. I just, I mean, maybe if you just wrote 3 or 4 sentences a week, you could be completely, unbiased and completely neutral. But, for as much content as we produce from such a varied different groups, we have, people from the north, people from the south, people from the east, west, like we have just about every group represented, and no one really pushes any narratives. If anything, we try to keep, the guests that we pick, but sometimes that evolves, and sometimes only certain people are available, and then you're just like, oh well, I can only get these 3 people for the show, and then it's like, well, but we can't have all those 3 because they might all have the same opinion or something. So it's a very delicate balancing act, and I think just on neutrality's sake, like we are as neutral as it can possibly be.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's cool. And if it isn't the Imperium putting out an unbiased, I think everybody wants to, in some way, reflect their intentions on Talking in Stations. I don't think Talking in Stations reflects Talking in Stations' intentions politically on anybody's corner. And when people say, yeah, you're from NC or anything, I just say, like, there's probably more people in NC that are rude to me and dismissive than are in the Imperium or in Test. It just depends. There are probably some people in Imperium who are, kind of rude to me lately, but yeah. So anyway, it's not like we're the NC broadcasting system or PL's broadcasting system. We actually want to talk about the games. We want to talk the players up. We want them to feel comfortable when they come up and talk. We don't want to corner them. We're not out to get them. We're not their adversary. We're a place where you can learn, just like today, incredible things from some of the players who are most experienced at this game. And it's a wonderful game. All right. With that, we are going to raid. Who are we going to raid, Ron?
Tamiya Cowboy. And if you build models, you recognize Tamiya. But Tamiya Cowboy, great guy, Streamfleet. He's also an admin on Streamfleet and typically does high sec, but just a great wealth of knowledge. Just a really, really nice guy.
Excellent. Well, let's check that out. I think I typed it in right. Don't know why it's not taking. Let's try that again. There we go. There was an actual space in there that I couldn't see. Not bad. Thanks everyone for showing up. Got up to about 180. I don't know. It was a lot of people watching today, but it was great stuff coming out of nullsec. So I want to say thanks, Ron, for hanging out, and thanks everybody that came on, and thank everybody for watching the show. We have some people actually here that we need to thank, like Your Biv, Zero Gravity, Banksy, and Skibet for follows. But Hoffman X dropped another 5 subs as gifts for people, and we really appreciate that. Thanks, Hoffman. That is super generous, and you do it all the time, which is great. Thanks to Adam. Thanks to Saxy. And bonus, Papa. Thanks, guys, very much. All right, stay tuned. We're going to move over to Tamio Cowboy.